Hey everybody, Sean Sewell with Engearment.com podcast. Very excited to have back my friend Pat Flynn. Pat, welcome back, my man. How are you?
It's a pleasure. Good, man. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see you as well. I always enjoy when you can put a face to the voice. So thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I know back in December we had a really lively and deep discussion, and I really want to follow up with that because we left the listeners with a lot of good theories to go over, and I turned a lot of people on to you, like in the backcountry ski community. They had discussion like this. Pat Flynn guy is really a fascinating person.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's very nice to hear. Thank
Yeah.
you all.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You know, a lot of the people actually, the part about you coming back to Catholicism was
Right.
a big topic we talked about in Skin Tracks.
Mm.
Yeah, you're affecting
Yeah,
people
well,
all around the
happy
world.
to explore any and all that to any degree we wish, Sean. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
You are a very busy, productive person. I'm just trying to catch up on all the things you're creating and working on. I mean, you have the Strong On community. You have a
Right.
lot of people in that. How many people do you have in that community now?
Oh, a couple thousand. Yeah, it's a vibrant community, and it's something that I'm really proud of, not just of myself, but the people in that group, because the culture is so good. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
good, especially on social media, where things can become so tribalistic and just nasty, downright nasty. There's something very special about the Strong On culture, where people are there to really support people, not in just like an overly fawning way.
Yeah.
People give support, direct feedback, criticism when people want criticism on technique, but it's always done in such a spirit of charity, of really wanting to help the other person. And I've often tried to step back and analyze, like, why is it that we have such a good, healthy culture here when so many other fitness groups and things don't? And I don't really have a solid answer for that. It's just the types of people that are in that group. But yeah, thanks for mentioning it. It's been going for years now, and it always makes me happy when I go onto social media to start my day in that group. Like, it sets the tone for me. Whereas if
Oh,
that's not always the case for everything else you see online, is it?
not at all, my friend. Not
Mhm.
at all. Well, I've enjoyed being part of that group. And like you said, I think it comes from having good, kind leadership on your part and your wife's part, and then having Alex in there, and then asking good questions like, what does everybody's home gym look like, and putting workouts in there, and the support has been really, really cool to see. And
Mhm.
trust me, like you, I help run some groups that have several thousand people in them, and there's not always kind comments that come through.
Yeah, and you do have to be willing to police the culture a little bit.
Hmm.
But I guess what I've found to be very fortunate is I've had to do very little of that.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, for anybody who's out there who's thinking of starting a group, they can be extremely valuable, especially for bringing people together around a certain theme. And creating accountability where people might not have that otherwise if they're doing some fitness program online. And I find that that's very helpful for people, even though it's not the same as working face to face with a coach. It's really good to have that. And so I guess what I would recommend is that you do your best, like you said, Sean, is to set the cultural expectations at the start. Here's what this group is for. Here's the types of conversations that we want you to have, that we expect you to have. And here's some things that are off limits. Like, if you want to talk about this stuff, totally fine. Just bring it to a different group.
Yeah.
Here's what we're focused on. And then, just making sure that people stay within those bounds. And I think if you do that, you can create a really vibrant and positive community. Takes work like anything else, but I think it's worth the effort.
Well said. Yeah, very well said. The community I'm referring to that I help run, I'm fortunate because I'm only one of 5 total admins, but we have, I think, last time I talked to you, we had 5,000. Now we have 6,500. It's growing like a
Wow.
plague, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a backcountry ski community. And like you said, we're looking to have supportive discussions, and here's some photographs of an area we went to today, and this was a snowpack, and we're going to carpool and go do this tour, and it's kid friendly or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then some people on there that just keyboard warrior craziness. Yeah.
internet quarterbacks. Yeah.
Oh
And
God,
like,
it's
look,
so true.
yeah, I get them all the time. I mostly get it through email and on
Yes.
YouTube. So no matter what, once you're in the online space, that's just the nature of the game, right? But when it comes to, this is my home, this is my space, maybe people will call me a dictator. I'm very quick to drop the hammer when I need to be. Like,
Yeah.
people think I'm generally a very nice and friendly guy, but if somebody starts to encroach right on my community or my I consider them, really family in an extended sense, and they're trying to poison it or contaminate it, yeah, I'll drop the hammer extremely fast.
Yeah,
And it's
I
pretty
like that.
merciless too. It's like a one and done deal. Like, that's it.
Oh, good.
So don't test it. Yeah.
Don't test Pat. Do you ban
Yeah.
the person or do you give them a warning?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ban, done, full. That's it.
Nice.
Of course, like if somebody's like teetering and I'm not, and they don't seem like an outright troll, right? If somebody's just an outright troll and they're just trying to stir the pot or something like that, it's just,
Mhm.
that's it. You're gone. Time to find, this is not the community for you.
Exactly.
But if, other times it's just, making sure that because we have various admins too, we'll just send, a message to somebody, hey, we appreciate you joining the conversation, but this is, not within our policies or, you know, boundaries of what this group is about. So, and
That's
then
really
if there's any pushback against that, then yeah, out, gone, goodbye,
yeah.
right? But most of the time there isn't. Most of the time people are like, oh yeah, I understand. Thanks for the heads up.
Exactly. And I think also too, written words are a lot harder to convey than like this, like, presence and body language. So it's easy
Right.
to take things and like you, I try and reach out to them via direct message or whatever personal message and say, hey, you know, the language I interpreted from you, you're a dick. You know?
Right, straight up, right? So,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's important. This is an interesting conversation. I love this. We have no agenda, just whatever
None.
comes up is good. Is that it's not just the matter of what people say, it's also the manner in which you say it,
Yeah.
right? Like both of these things are important, right? And you might have a lot of like really important and good things to say, but if you're always just being a jerk about it, like
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like that's just not going to fly here, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's an important note, like for anybody in any business of communication whatsoever. Oh, it's not just the matter of what you say, but the
Yes.
manner and how you say it is extremely important, especially for writers and marketers. You have to pay attention to both. And that was always a lesson that I got from, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, some of the writers that I really
Oh
admired,
yeah.
where they're so good that in their manner of expression that it didn't even matter what the matter was. I think
Hmm.
I gave the example maybe last time of E.B. White. Like he could just talk about chicken coops for 36 pages, which I have no interest in.
Yeah.
But
But he
just
makes it.
his voice, his prose style, his demeanor is just so utterly attractive. And that always intrigued me. Like what is that? Like can that be analyzed? Can that be learned or imitated? I think there's something there. I don't think it'd be like really analyzed, and I don't think it could be really taught. But I think it is something that can be imitated and eventually learned.
That's a good point. Because you do a lot of writing and a lot of copywriting too, and very good copywriting at that. And over the years, I've started to copyright myself, especially for Engearment. When I write something, I try and write it in a way that the reader would want to read it, not how I would talk directly. Because I might be
Right.
like, loquacious and get really big paragraphs, but like I've learned to try and talk in other people's languages to communicate to them. And I think that's
Right.
yeah, and that goes for like any kind of business. It could be a doctor, a lawyer, a fitness professional, whatever it is. If you can't get your message to that person for them to understand it, then it won't do any good.
Yeah, that's a great point. You have to meet their expectations,
Hmm.
and this is something I've had to learn because I write in many different areas, right? So I write academic papers, I write copy, I write blog articles, I write books, and each of those is a different, really method or mode where I have to make pretty dramatic adjustments to my style and approach, and certain methods that I'll use in copywriting would be laughable and embarrassing if I'm trying to get a journal published, for
Yes.
example, right? It'd just be utterly ridiculed, right? This
Yeah.
is like, but that's important because it's like music too, right? There's just certain um, elements of certain styles of music that make sense for that style of music that would just seem completely out of place if you were to try and perform that in front of a certain crowd.
Hmm.
But I remember as a musician, this goes back even before I relearned this principle in writing. And that's kind of always an interesting thing where you can learn a principle in one area and you don't immediately see the connection at first, but then you'll see how it does eventually carry over into all these other disciplines. My guitar instructor when I was very young, I always wanted just to play metal, like straight up speed metal. Like that's
Oh
it. I
yeah.
just want to be super fast, pyrotechnic on the guitar. And he's like, look, Pat, you need to learn other styles of music. You need to learn country. You need to learn jazz. Because eventually, these other elements will offer enhancements to the one thing you're really interested in, even if not in a direct way. in an indirect way, right? They'll give you ideas for phrasing or melody, even if it's, not the exact same expression as, like a Steve Vai or a Joe Satriani or something like that. And I was resistant to that at first, but over the years I was like, okay, fine, Peter, his name was Peter. I'll learn these different styles of music. And he was absolutely right. And being able to shift gears, made me to learn jazz and to learn country, which I'm not a country fan. No, I'm just not. Like, there's many great country musicians. It's just not my thing. But learning elements of country just gave me so much more raw material, I guess is what I'm saying. And the more raw material you have, the more creative and effective you can be overall. I think it's the point I'm trying to get at here. Not articulating very well, but we'll refine it eventually, right? And then same thing in writing. Like, there's certain elements of copywriting that have made me better, say, when I'm writing philosophical articles, right, in an academic setting, in terms of even just focusing on clarity and brevity and conciseness, which you often don't get in academic papers. But I found that has been really helpful, and vice versa, right? Having backgrounds and more academic backgrounds in economics and philosophy, I think, has made me a better thinker. And when you're a better thinker, well, writing is just thinking on paper. That's all writing really is. And then that in turn will make you a better copywriter as well. So it wasn't kind of until many years later when I started to see these valuable connections. It wasn't like I planned all this up front, like, oh, I need to study this so I'll be better at this. It's just happy luck, really, at the end of the day, that all this came together. But when I look back on it from that perspective, I realized, oh yeah, that this whole generalist approach, right, really was something that was extremely valuable for me, especially in my business, especially as a marketer and copywriter.
That's very helpful. On the music point too, we both play guitar, and like you, my started with Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and I really enjoyed playing those. And I moved.
Love your recent videos, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, and yours as well. It's fun stuff to play, right? It brings back a lot of memories. But I moved out here to Colorado. I couldn't find anybody to jam with. Nobody want to play death metal, So
come on, guys, get with it.
I'm like, you're missing out, guys. We can just do 200 beats per minute and go crazy.
Right? Yeah, like, we don't even have to worry about being like precise with rhythm. We could just
gallop and fast picking.
Yeah. So funny, man. Actually, I recently went back. I put a video up of it. I went back and I'm like, I need to go back and revisit some Megadeth. So I went back to the old Tornado of Souls.
Oh wow, yeah.
The Friedman. It's on my Facebook page. I got it, and he's a good example of the generalism, because if you studied Marty Friedman, this was Megadeth's guitarist, I think from like the early 90s to the late 90s, I believe, right? Friedman was at them, and he's a guitarist. He's really well known in the guitar world for just being a virtuoso and having a really unique style. But part of the reason he had such a unique style is because he didn't just study metal. He specifically studied Japanese enka music, which most people have never heard of, right? But it has this very interesting vibrato quality to the vocalists. And so what Marty tried to do is he tried to imitate that vibrato quality on the guitar. And that's why he has such a unique sound for all of his bends, is because of this influence from Japanese enka music. And everybody tries to study Marty as Marty. Like, okay, yeah, he's like a really technical, metal guitarist. But the reason he's so unique is because he didn't restrict himself to just listening to metal guitarists. And it were these sort of more exotic influences. And you can hear that, like his style sounds very exotic. That's the word that most people think of with Friedman. It just sounds Eastern almost. And the reason is because he listened to so much Eastern music and brought that into metal. And I think that's why he's so well remembered and respected.
I had no idea. I mean, I was back in the day when it was it Jason Becker with Cacophony, and listening to
Correct.
Such a good album, and just two virtuosos going back and forth. It's just if you like technical speed metal, it's something you check out. I didn't know
Cacophony was crazy.
Oh my God, it was incredible.
And Becker was like 16 or something when they originally recorded that. It's just ridiculous.
So incredible. Oh man, I would do my paper out and come home and just jam on my first guitar was a BC Rich Ironbird with EMG pickups.
Rock on, dude.
Yeah, super shreddy. Well, what was your first guitar?
Epiphone Les Paul.
Oh, classic.
Epiphone Les Paul. Yeah, I got it second grade, late second grade. Super big and clunky on me, but I was begging my parents, begging, because ever since, when I first, like, some of my earliest memories was my mom playing AC/DC in the car, and just that just, I don't know, man, that exploded my love for music. Just the original Back in Black album, and I just developed this instant and deep obsession, specifically with AC/DC, but then eventually everything rock from there. And so I
Wow.
just bet, and I would do everything I could to just consume as much Angus Young. I was the biggest
Hmm.
Angus fan, right? I think in like the fourth grade, I dressed up as Angus. My dad took me to see AC/DC, and of course, I still love AC/DC, and I have so much more appreciation for them now as I think I've become more musically mature, because everyone kind of makes fun of AC/DC, and they're like, oh, all their stuff sounds the same. They use the same three chords, but there's a principle of creativity there, right? In that, in order to be remembered and I think really creative, I think it comes down to what AC/DC does really well. A lot of it is something you can really hook into pretty easily.
Hmm.
It's somewhat predictable, but it's filled with the little surprises. And
Hmm.
I think that's the secret. Mostly predictable, but with little surprises. And I think that's true with writing too, right? If somebody's writing is just a whole bunch of crazy, odd words that you've never really seen before, you're just going to be confused, right? But if somebody has that occasional odd word that just fits and it's a little surprise, there's something delightful about that. Just delightful about a little word every now and then, like salubrious. If they could just slip that
Whoa.
in, right? Just, but you can't use like words like that all the time, because then nobody's going to have something to connect with, right? It's those
Yeah.
little surprise. And same thing with Marty Friedman. A lot of what he does is, you're pretty basic, technical, well, very technical, but
Yeah.
still rudimentary stuff with those little surprises, like that, like his special way of doing vibrato. So when I look to AC/DC now, I see that's what they do so well, right? They have such a mastery of the basics, but then they just find little ways to introduce these elements of delightful surprises, whether it's just rhythmically or where Angus in his leads just seems to be able to find exactly where every note should be placed. I mean, you listen to any solo in Back in Black and you're like, yeah, I don't know how I would improve that. Like that just
Right.
seems exactly how it should be. Like even if I tried to play it faster or put more notes in, like I don't think it would be better.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, my love for ACD. The point is, my love for ACDC, which started my, I think my musical inclination, has only increased over time. They haven't diminished in my view
Oh,
as
that's
I've
awesome.
become, I think, more acquainted with even more technical musicians. There's something about their synergy as a group that it's hard to match it. I
Yeah.
think. Hmm.
That's a beautiful backstory on how you learned to appreciate AC/DC through your mother. And I can imagine, I mean, Les Paul is a heavy guitar, but for a second grader, that's like
Right.
half your body weight.
Oh yeah, super clunky. I have the old pictures. I was kind of well, I got pretty chubby later on, so it balanced out. Um, but I'm in Waukesha now, Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is the home of Les Paul. So I
I
live
didn't
in
know
Les
that.
Paul's hometown. That's right. There's a little like Les Paul museum downtown. It's pretty cool.
You didn't plan that, did you? From second grade on to move there?
No, I had no idea, honestly, until I moved to the area. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That's really awesome.
Hmm.
Well, okay, it kind of makes sense. My assumption of why you have an SG now.
I do. Well, yeah. So I have the Angus, and that's my primary. I use that a lot, and I think I get some dirty tones out of it. And
It's a
then my other
surprisingly good guitar.
then my other primary guitar is a Nuno, Washburn Nuno. Remember Nuno from the band Extreme?
Oh, he was actually really good.
Oh, he's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
underrated.
one of my yeah, highly underrated, one of my favorite guitarists, and his guitar is just I'm looking at it. I can't get it right now, but it's a
I'm
beautiful guitar.
I'm
Yeah.
hanging up on the wall right there. Like, oh, come over here. Yeah, I had never thought about an SG because I'm all like, I had the crazy metal guitar, and then seven string Ibanez, and like all the really goofy crap. And
Right.
then I kind of tabled guitar playing for quite a while. And my wife, she's so sweet. For my 38th birthday, I believe, she pulled together money with her father and some other relatives, and they bought me a Gibson SG guitar.
It's
And
beautiful.
it's such a good guitar. I had no idea how great of a guitar it is.
Hmm.
The action's good and the tone's warm, and
Yep.
it's just amazing. Underrated guitar. It's great.
Yeah, it's like it's such a well balanced guitar. Like you can go pretty much as fast as you would ever need, right? You're
Hmm.
not going to set any records on the SG, but you can definitely move on that thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the action's great, the feel is great, the tone's awesome. I have no complaints. There's a reason why that's typically the guitar that I'm grabbing,
Yeah.
especially for most of my recordings too. It's pretty much all SG. I don't even
Oh,
use the Nuno that much, like every once in a while.
yeah.
But mhm.
Well, makes sense. Well, let's talk about your setup. So most recently, you started making your own track for your podcast. It sounds awesome. How cool
Thank
is
you.
that to have your own creation for your other creation? That's
It's,
awesome.
it's really rewarding. And like when I was young, I always thought like I'm just going to be a musician or writer were the two kind of options for me. And obviously the professional musician thing didn't happen, but I still create music, all the time, very frequently.
Hmm.
I'm recording almost every single day. And I found that, you know, um, it's just an act of expression that's fulfilling in and of itself.
Yeah.
Whether I ever actually put an album together for sale or not, just the fact that I can put some of my tunes, I use them on my YouTube workout videos too, right? Just as the
Yeah.
background guitar riffs and stuff like that. Like that just makes me really happy. I don't know why. And just to think that even if people on YouTube are just primarily there for my workout, you're getting you're getting my music whether you like it or not, right? I'm gonna
Yeah.
force it on you. Has been, it's just a fun thing for me. And it's I found that that's because, like you, there was a period of my life where I just wasn't, I don't know, I was still playing, I was still practicing, but music just I guess I was kind of depressed by
Hmm.
thinking like I guess I'm just never going to be touring the world with my guitar. So I was kind of at a lost point there. And then I finally snapped out of it and realized, well, look, like, don't be stupid, dude. Like you're creating stuff all the time, which is what you love to do. Most of it's
Hmm.
writing, books and articles. So like you're still being creative. Just figure out a way to try and infuse music into that somehow. So I'm like, okay, well, what could I do? Well, I could use my tracks for my YouTube channel. I
Hmm.
could occasionally force my tracks onto people through my email list. Right. I
That'd be
could I could
entertaining.
I could use some when I'm not being lazy as the intro to my podcast, because I'm pretty lazy with my podcast. I don't like to do the editing and stuff, but every once in a while I'll throw it
It's
like in
time
the beginning
consuming.
or the end. Yeah. And so yeah, I don't know if there's a point to this aside from the fact that I would say that there's something inherently fulfilling about creating something and putting it out there with no expectations,
Yes.
with no expectations at all. Because I always have expectations for some things, especially professional projects. But there's something really almost freeing in a way where I no longer have those expectations with music, and it's actually become a lot more fun. Like I'm almost more excited about music now than I was when I was like 18 in a way.
Oh, that's super
Mhm.
cool. And I can add on that and relate to that. When I couldn't find people to jam with on death metal out here, I tried to learn like grunge was big when I was out here in the '90s, jamming on that, and then I got old, and then I totally put the guitar like in the garage, didn't touch it for
Mhm.
years, and of all things, I became a professional DJ. So totally different genre of music.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's fun. I got to play big clubs and raves and parties, and I got paid for it. So I guess I was a professional musician for a while, but playing other people's music basically.
Mhm.
And I got out of that scene for a lot of reasons. I mean, a whole lot of good decisions happen after 2 a.m. So, mm.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh yeah, it made for some fun stories over some drinks sometime, Pat. But now I get up at 4 a.m. and I like my lifestyle's a lot more routine and beneficial and
Yeah.
healthy. But I picked up the guitar one day and put the turntables away, and yeah, I think the ability to get something right out of your soul without any expectations, you just get it
Yeah.
out. And like you, I have a good ability to express myself, especially emotions. And so music is
Mhm.
just one of those um, priceless things you can do. And if somebody gets joy out of it too, all the better.
Yeah, and it's so rewarding when people will actually respond to it, like, "Hey, what's that?" My favorite thing is when they'll ask what that song is, right? I'm like,
Right.
"Oh, well, I'll
Oh,
tell you."
yeah, I know that
Oh,
guy.
wait. Yeah. But no, yeah, being creative without expectations, I think, is kind of what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. Is so fulfilling and so freeing, and it was something that I've only come to appreciate, I would say, in the past, in relatively recent past, because I've always created with expectations.
Right.
And sometimes that's necessary, right? Sometimes that's useful. But there's just been such a wonderful discovery in my life, to all the points that you just said. Just create because you love it,
Hmm.
because it's expressive, and just don't have it. Just put it out there. Just hit publish
Right.
wherever that is, and just let it fly, and with no expectations. And I
Oh, I
promise
love it.
you,
I think you'll because we all have a creative impulse of some sort.
Hmm.
So however you need to get that out, whether it's knitting or music or writing, just do it. And who cares, if anybody hears it, if anybody reads it. But somebody eventually will. Somebody
Yeah.
definitely, even if it's just your kids, right? And sometimes I think about that, like, if nothing else, like, I know my kids are going to go back and listen to my music someday,
Oh, that's
and
the most rewarding right there.
that alone makes it seems to make it worth it for me, right? Even just something, for them to have.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's super cool. We don't have kids yet, but we're planning on having kids here in the next future year or two, and it'd be so amazing to do anything to inspire them like that.
Yeah, and they do too. So my son's doing piano lessons now. I actually started learning piano with him, so I never learned piano before. So this is a new skill for me.
Hmm.
And my wife accidentally signed me up to take piano lessons with him because she's like, "Do you want to take piano lessons with Rowan?" I thought she meant, "Will you take Rowan to piano lessons?" So
Hmm.
I said, "Yeah." And so she just signed us both up. So it's me, him, and Miss Eileen every Thursday doing our little, and I'm actually getting a little decent. The hardest thing about piano is synchronizing the hands, which is totally new
Oh
for a
yeah,
guitarist. It just makes your brain explode to have to try and work the hands independently. But it's actually been really cool to learn that new skill. But it's also really cool just to be able to take something I love, music, and just be able to share it with my kids and practice it with my son, stuff like that. And man, kids learn so much quicker. They
yeah,
do. It's incredible. Like, it's different because, like, as an adult, you're a little bit more disciplined and more focused. But I'm always amazed at how quickly my kids pick things up.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's so true. We have four nieces. I think we have a niece's birthday party this weekend. They're always having birthdays, and watching them learn something like they're learning Spanish. They learned sign language before they spoke English, and
Hmm.
all these amazing things. They're just sponges, and like their
Hmm.
neuroplasticity is so much more efficient than I feel like as we are as adults.
That's right.
Yeah,
Then us crusty old men. Yeah.
we are crusty and cranky. And just
So the point is, start early, friends.
yes,
For all you babies listening,
yeah.
start learning piano now. For
Let
all you
mom sign
2-year
you up.
olds, yeah, do it. It's worth it. But there's also hope in the sense that I've even if you are older, like, I'm definitely learning piano. I'm definitely getting these skills down. It's kind of slow. It's kind of
Mhm.
arduous, but you can still do it when you're older, right? The old dog can learn new tricks. You just
Yes,
need a process. Hmm.
very true. You mentioned you record. You mind if I ask you what you record into? I'm like gear freak, and I like
Yeah,
stuff.
very simple. I would actually try and show you, but it's all dark because of the lighting in here. But
Mhm.
I use a Black Star amp. I always used to use Marshalls, but I recently switched to Black Star.
What is Black Star? I haven't heard Black Star.
Yeah, it's a small little tube amp, and it just has a. If you listen to my tunes, you'll get an impression of the tone, and that's it. I'm guitar amp mic.
Oh, I like that.
I have a dynamic Shure mic,
The
and I
SM57.
yeah, and I
Cool.
record directly into Pro Tools, and that's
Yeah.
it. So
Hey, that works.
I'm like a no effects guy.
I
So guitar, amp, mic, rock and roll. That's it.
I really appreciate that. I have a Vox tube amp. That's what I play into. And it's got
Yeah.
that real once the tubes warm up just right, it's that warm, almost like Van Halen-ish kind of
Hmm. Yeah.
brownish.
It's
Yeah.
you just don't need anything extra,
No.
right? It's
I
just the dynamics and the warmth and the crunch is just perfect. Hmm.
Yeah. It's not getting lost in some digital signal processor somewhere. I mean, back in the day I had like a foot pedal like orgy happening and just clicking on crap and making sounds and echoing and just
Foot pedal orgy. I'm familiar. Those were my high school days. And then I
yeah.
just realized I'm using all this stuff less and less and less and less. And then
Yeah.
I eventually just got rid of all of it.
Yeah.
And there's also something I like. I like kind of when I record too of having skin in the game. I refuse to multi-track. It's
Good
one
for
take
you.
for
Yes.
everything. I put the metronome on, and there's two reasons I do that. One is it makes me a better musician, right? I
Mhm.
want to make sure I have my stuff down. And two is there's something about the dynamics of having something that's more organic throughout,
Yes.
where it isn't exactly the same throughout the song. Like, there's just, you could call them subtle imperfections, and I think arguably they are subtle imperfections, but it's just different dynamics, really. And you hear that in some of my favorite musicians. You hear that in AC/DC,
Mhm.
right? You hear that in Van Halen, where it's okay, he's not playing that exactly the same way every time. And I think that's interesting. Whereas if you just take a chunk and you just loop it, I don't know, it just sounds always very robotic and artificial to me. So
I completely agree. I mean,
mhm.
on a lot of levels, back when I was a DJ, we all had our promo mixtapes and then CDs, and then Now they're on downloads. And I would always record my sets live at the club, mostly drunk. And then that would be my promo, like, because this is honestly how it's going to sound if you book me,
Yep. Yeah. This is it. This is the
Yeah.
real deal.
Yeah. I guarantee it'll be at least this good next time. So
Yep.
being honest and being just, human.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate those, like you said, subtle imperfections that show the rawness and the emotion and the clarity of the vision.
Yeah.
Tuned up.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love this is great, man. I really enjoy these conversations, right?
Oh, me too. We have a lot to share with the
Cool.
listeners, and hopefully they find it inspiring. And I was thinking about this. This year has been a lot of ups and downs, and it's easier for people to see on social media or get the perception that things are always perfect. But I like to give honesty that, there's a lot of struggles that I go through, and I'm sure you do too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
I
think people get in this dangerous comparison game, right? The grass is always greener, or like, oh, look at, they're doing all these fun things in the mountains, or blah blah blah, or and I really want to clarify to people, like, to stop doing that, because it's not what the fantasy in your head is not what's really happening. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. So I mean, we can I'm happy to be as open and transparent about anything. Like, life is a struggle, my friends. It's a struggle for every single one of us, and there's so much I have in my life that I'm so utterly grateful. Like, I thank God every day for these things in my life. I really do. My family, my children, my general health, all of it. But I mean, we all have our cross to bear. Literally, we all have things in our life that we struggle with. I mean, for me personally, I have had just like lifelong, like quite severe anxiety for most of my life. And it runs in my, and this is something I've talked about on my podcasts and email before. And I think that's really important, because there's still this kind of this odd stigma around mental health in general. So I try to share this as much as I can, but it's run in my family, forms of anxiety, depression. As a very, very nervous little kid, like I used to have panic attacks when I was very young. So yeah, I mean, this is life, right? We all have these different things that we're dealing with on many different levels. So yeah, don't let any initial impression here make it seem like everything is rainbows and unicorns. I have so much that I'm grateful for. I'm so thankful for my general existence, of course, but we all have our trials and tribulations that we're working through every day.
It's so true. And I'm so glad that you're honest and open about that too. I am, I can go down the rabbit hole. I'm happy to be as open and honest too. Like, agoraphobia and anxiety and crippling depression I battled. And, also I had a disabled brother, and disabled parents and sisters, and they've all passed. And so that's really tough situations to accept. And so I try and talk about that too, openly, because what I found is, if I'm open and honest about like about hospice and cancer and therapy and grieving, it allows other people to feel those emotions and talk about them more openly, and hopefully remove that stigma, because people, they want to present the shiny versions of themselves to get accepted. But I think people will be more accepting if they saw the whole raw version.
Right. And it kind of gives you a glimpse of like what some of the possible concomitant goods of a life of suffering could possibly be, right? Because that's one of the great like philosophical and theological issues. Like, why do we live in an imperfect world? Like, why does suffering exist? And certainly something that I've learned and I've come to appreciate more as I've kind of dove into the Catholic faith, which has a very sophisticated and nuanced view of suffering, is that suffering is not against love. Suffering is for the promotion of love. And I think you just gave an example of this, that suffering tends to break down our superficiality, our egotistical behavior, our sort of false notion that we can just do everything by ourselves, because we get to these points of being crippled where we have to cry out for help. We do. I've been there countless times. And it can lead to greater unity and compassion and understanding and justice, really this greater fostering of love. And it's been times in my life when I've had the worst suffering, that I thought there could be no possible reason or good for this, when some of the greatest love in my life has come out of that. And not just love that was showed to me by others, but it increased my compassion and empathy and understanding for other people as well. So you get glimpses of how this can be the case. And in suffering, we can develop certain virtues and character traits as well, not just compassion, but perseverance, endurance, hope. And these seem like really really good things. In fact, I think most of us would think that some of these seem like the best things that there are, like, in existence. Like, I think most people would say, yeah, like things like compassion, empathy, justice, love are like the highest goods,
Hmm.
highest category of moral goods, if you think there is such a thing. And it's just very interesting to see that these things are what tends to come out or be promoted often in times, or at least after times of periods of really profound suffering.
Yeah.
And I think most of us can look back on our life, whether it's a traumatic loss in our life. I mean, recently for me, I even think of somebody. I lost my grandfather, who was very much like a father to me. This was a couple of years ago, and I mean, it was so utterly devastating when
Hmm.
he passed. But not only did it reunite elements of our family that were kind of broken at that time. So that was kind of interesting to see how people came back together and relationships were healed because of this man, because everybody knew how good of a man he was,
Hmm.
and they could see that they fell short of what he wanted for the family. And so there was deep reconciliation on many levels. But it even caused me to reflect of, well, why did I love this man so much? And it was because of how he loved me and how he
Wow.
loved other people, right? And it really made me turn inward and realize I need to be more like that. So I'm just tossing a whole bunch of stuff out here, but I think it's important to keep that perspective in mind, because we all go through such deep periods of suffering in our lives.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. This is going to help somebody. Like, if one listener benefits from this conversation, this is a huge success.
Mhm.
To your point, I think I've definitely been through a lot of darkness, and I think getting through that darkness has allowed me to get to more light.
Right.
And it's been you don't get those virtues you mentioned just by opening up a book. You have to experience something and work on stuff yourself to persevere, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference, as I've learned, right? Because there's one thing when you study like theodicy or the problem of evil from a philosophical perspective, from an intellectual perspective. Um, that's the easy thing, right? Like
Yeah,
we can show intellectually there's no like incompatibility between an all good God and the existence of suffering. Like that we can do that. The hard part is the emotional part, when we
hmm,
go through it, right? When we live it. And that's where we need a lot of stuff, right? We need other people, we need pastors, we need counselors. I would argue we even need prayer.
hmm,
And again, it come for me, there are a lot of good books that give you perspective on this, but it's how do you respond to that suffering, right? Do you see it
hmm.
as opportunities to grow in greater compassion, love, understanding, justice, mercy as well? And you're right, Sean. It seems like it's if we see these things as being really good, like, I think, again, most of us would admit these seem like the highest goods, right? If there's
Hmm.
a meaning of life that I think most people would agree on, regardless of their religious commitment, it's just it's love, right?
Yeah,
It's loving each other. But but love, especially in forms of empathy and compassion and mercy, it's kind of hard to see how we could develop these virtues if we don't go through certain challenges
yeah,
in
yeah,
life. If we don't face these obstacles and often periods of intense darkness, and it's not always clear when you're suffering of what these opportunities could be. And like I said, there's often times in my life when I feel like there's no possible good that could come out of this.
right,
Like, this
yeah,
just seems the worst thing ever. But it's not until afterwards, right? It's
hmm,
not until afterwards that I've gone through this and people have helped me and stepped in really courageous ways. Courage is another one, right? That's another
yes,
virtue,
oh yeah,
hugely important, that I look back and I realize, okay, I can see wisdom there. I can see providence at work there, even though I couldn't see it at the time. When I look back, I am a better person now. I'm a more loving person now because of the suffering that I went through.
it's so true. That's very well put. Um, there's a lot of things I can bring up to relate to this. The very first one, my brother was mentally disabled. My whole family is morbidly obese, and they're hoarders and mental illnesses, and
Mhm.
so growing up in that environment gave me a lot of empathy and compassion for people. Um,
Right.
I was like, I didn't look like I fit in the family because I was like healthy and exercised, and they're
Mm-hmm.
all 350 pounds and on oxygen and CPAP
Mm-hmm.
machines. So it gave me a good appreciation for how people can, how they suffer, and then to try and help them. My brother died of a heart attack at age 21. And like you said, at the time, I'm like, how the heck could this happen? And so he's an organ donor. So I made a decision, which is a very tough decision to pull the plug on life support. I've had to do that for each one of my family members, my sister as well, both my parents, to put them on hospice. And that's a really tough thing to go through. And everybody's going to go through this at some point in their life, losing
Yeah.
parent or a sibling or something. But from that, I enrolled in fitness education the next day and became a health professional because I want to help
Wow.
people with their health. And
Yeah.
so it's a traumatic growth, right? So you go through these dark periods and you're like, there's no possible way this is something good. But then you find courage and like, all right, I can help more people get a better quality of life. And I have my intrinsic reasons are beyond financial and shininess. Just
Yeah,
want
it's not for the superficial,
no.
egotistical reasons, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty. That's where the light can break through or
Hmm.
continue to shine on in those periods of darkness. So I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is
Me too.
something that again that I'm sure this is the case with you, that like we not only have suffered through but currently are and will.
Yes.
Right? Like I have no false expectations that there are going to be many more periods in my life where I'm going to go through deep periods
Yeah.
of intense suffering. We all do. And it is very important to be open about these things, because social media is often paints such a false portrait of the world for
I
everybody.
know. Oh, and it's
Um,
so dangerous. I mean, I've actually had
mhm.
friends confront me because they haven't seen me in a while, and they're like, "What happened to you? All I see is on you're split boarding and climbing mountains and swinging kettlebells with your shirt off." I'm like, "That's what I put on my business page," but like, I was in hospice with my mother and father for a year, and like, and they get
Right.
mad at you, like, because they see something. I'm like, "Well, I'm telling you what's really going on. So accept it
Hmm.
or not. That's what's really going on." And
Yeah.
so, yeah, people can form their fantasies and judgments, but yeah. Social media is a blessing
Yeah.
and a curse for a lot of reasons.
It is, but that's what I like I said, I really do mean that I love these conversations with you. But I think that's why these types of podcasts are the types of podcasts that I listen to,
Hmm.
because as much fun as I enjoy talking about music and writing and business and all that, like this is real life. Like this
Heck
is the
yeah.
stuff that we all need to hear, right? That we're all in this together, and that we all go through this in our lives. So what can we do about it? Like how can we respond?
Hmm.
So yeah. Hmm.
I love talking about this too, and I talk about it with my people I help in personal training. Like this morning, I'm over at the law firm gym that I help build, and I'm training group class, and I'm training a woman who's going through something I went through a year and a half ago, which is um, taking over as power of attorney for her parents who are disabled and getting them into assisted living and enrolling hospice for her father. And so it was really rewarding, not just to show her how to do a one arm kettlebell swing today, but also to give her the contact for the assisted living where my parents were. She's going there Monday to,
Hmm.
get the liaison to help bring her parents over to there, find a place for the dog, and like offering those kinds of resources to her so that her path is a little more paved as far as logistics.
Right. And that's one of the other kind of like beautiful, there's an interesting like thing about love, where love seems to be inherently unifying. There seems to be a connection between the idea of union and love. I mean, I think even like my little baby, like what do I want to do with my little baby? I just want to like smush my face into hers. Like you just like want to be close, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
union. Of course, there's the romantic forms of love too that has its own union, but it's unifying in that like love like brings down restrictions and boundaries and exclusions, right? Between people, and suffering can really promote that unification, and for good reasons, where you want to help this person, not because you want to hit a certain income number, or because you want just cool pictures for Instagram, but because you can you can relate, and in some sense that you're like in union with her suffering,
Yes.
right? You're in union with her suffering, and there's this deep compassion that you now have, and empathy and understanding. And there's something so inherently beautiful and good about that, and the unification that this brings about. Now, I'm not downplaying, how difficult suffering is when we're in it, but I think
Mhm.
it's so important to keep these perspectives in mind. So that way, because when I suffer now, which is again, we all suffer, I'm always asking, trying to find, okay, what is the opportunity here for grace? What is the
Mhm.
opportunity here for growth? How can I continue to grow in my spiritual life, in my moral life? And the answer is not always clear, right?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
sometimes the answer is always, you can always accept and surrender and offer it up, right? There's some theological things, but there's usually other deeper and more specific opportunities too. And it's hard to keep that in mind when you're going through suffering, but I think it is important to have that perspective when you go through these things. And it's just interesting, that example you brought up, because I've been kind of thinking a lot about the relationship between love and the idea of union lately. And I think that your example plays into that pretty well.
Oh, it's awesome. Very, very grateful to hear that. And as well said, I think love is just the most rewarding and essential thing, and an honest thing too. Like she didn't come
Right.
to the class today to learn where to go for her folks, what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but now she gets to leave with a little bit more. Her body's feeling good, her mind's feeling good, her spirit's feeling good, and she knows that her parents can go to a good place. And yeah, hopefully these kind of connections help other people open up and talk about their struggles they've been through, because it might help somebody, and then that barrier comes down and the growth happens, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and the other big thing to realize is, when we're going through something very difficult, this was how I felt when I was a kid, when I was first having anxiety too, is I felt like I was the only one in the world.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that feeling of isolation, right? Exclusion again, right? Rather than being in union with it can be really terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would just emphasize, whatever you're going through, you're not the only one, right?
Yeah.
Believe me, you're
Yeah.
not. Uh-huh.
That's very worth saying again, because it's so true. It's oftentimes I found, and I'm still guilty of it. Like even last week I was in a funk, and I secluded. I'm really good at that. I'm like really good at just, going really introverted. And it was a 3-day weekend for most people. So I just stayed in and worked like nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
And, but my favorite part about that 3 days was I got out and I saw like an 80-year-old neighbor, shoveling snow when we had talk. I'm like, connection. That's good. I need to do more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're social animals, right? There's something within our nature which is really oriented towards, I would argue, love, of learning to will the good of the other for other. That's the sort of classic definition of love, agape. There's a really good book by C.S. Lewis called The Four Loves, because the thing with the English language is we often equivocate on the term love, but the Greeks had more precise terms for love, right? So you had philia, storge, eros, and agape. And, so you have kind of like the type of love where you might say, I love coffee, right? Well, that you like coffee, but you don't love it, right? In this say.
Yeah.
So the book's really cool because it gets very clear on like what love is in its highest form, in the form that most of us have at least some intrinsic awareness of willing the good of the other for other, even when there's no immediate or direct benefit for ourselves. And yeah, I think most people realize that is it. That's like the highest principle right there. Yeah. And when you see that, right, when you see that in the lives of others, it's always attractive, right? It's always attractive when you see somebody who lives that type of life of love.
That's beautiful, Pat. I learned a lot in that little talk. 4 different kinds of love.
It's called The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I had that written down. Put that in the show notes. I'm gonna get is there hopefully an Audible book version of that?
I would imagine. Yeah, his stuff is so popular.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I drive a lot going to mountains so often, and I do a lot of audiobooks, and that's how I get my learning on. And
it's smart. Mm-hmm.
Agape, that's actually the name of a hospice out here, and that makes sense that it's love.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Learning all kinds of stuff. I always look forward to our talks because I'm going to learn at least like 5 new words, probably polysyllabic, so I can go play some Scrabble and kick some ass. So it's really helpful.
Yeah, I'll throw out some words. Just don't ask me the definition for them always, right? Sometimes it's fun just to use a word you have no idea what it means.
Yeah, the very first one you use, like, or I have written down, but I can't even say it.
Salubrious.
Salubrious, yes.
Yeah, health promoting, right? This is a salubrious beverage.
Wow. Okay, all weekend is salubrious.
Mm-hmm.
Last weekend was bifurcation. Yeah.
Like a bifurcated tail, right?
Yeah.
Bifurcated. Yeah.
Oh my God. Threatening to bifurcate our dogs.
Yeah.
How funny. Yeah, words are fun. Like, especially so good at using words to describe things in your writing. And let's talk about writing. So you are a very good copywriter. I listened to one of your podcasts with your friend, was it Jordan, about there's an abbreviation for the copywriting style. There's 2 of them. AED something? A?
Oh yeah, so these would be frameworks for copywriting. One of them would be like just so if you're a copywriter and you want to kind of I guess a formula or a script or a prompt to help you just get started. The more simple one that I like is actually problem agitation solution, right? That would be one.
Yeah,
and the idea is, identify the problem, draw out all the reasons of why this is a problem, right? So it's kind of like the idea of like, okay, look, here we know this sucks, and here's why this sucks. Let's familiarize ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then offer a solution, provide hope. That's the basic general copywriting 101 formula, and it's good. So like anything else, like any other skill, you should have a process or a system, and you master that process or system,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually you won't need to just rely on the script anymore. Like you'll have it ingrained, and then you can start to be more creative. But like anything else, I recommend if you're gonna learn something right, you just got to do your rudiments first, right? You got to
Right.
learn the basics. You just got to drill away, hammer away. You got to, as my music theory teacher always used to say, you have to know the rules before you're allowed to intelligently break the rules.
Oh, I like that.
She drilled that into us constantly through high school. And it was worth it, right? Because I would always be doing like learning my counterpoint and all this stuff. I'm like, what is the point of never constructing parallel fifths? I'm like, well, parallel fifths is all I do as a guitarist, right?
Oh yeah, power chords.
Yeah, that's right, power chords, right? And I'm like, this is like totally like how could I even play the guitar, right? Of course, I still played my parallel fifths, but in my composition classes, like that was like, you could never do that, right? I would immediately fail. But then like you could do that after a certain point. Like then it became okay, right? Once you understood these rules. But same thing with copywriting, same thing with writing in general, right? You do your rudiments, you get your basics down. Once you know the rules, once you have a mastery, then you can start to really become more creative because of that, right? Otherwise, it's just random and it's a mess. You're not really being creative. You're just being sloppy.
Yes, and that's very true. And I spent years being sloppy, and I've kind of refined my process, and just by doing it daily, probably 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, and then editing down to 600 to 1,000 and publishing that. And it's really helped me because partly that's how I make money business wise. Like Patagonia, Mountain Hardwear, North Face, they pitch an idea like, here's a thing, here's a product, test it, write about it, do a 4K video, and I enjoy that. And so since I talked to you last, I think we gained like 5 new writers.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. I have like 25 creative geniuses who are outside doing what they love without their kids, with dogs. Some are deaf, all different kinds of backgrounds. Some are adopted. Some are young kids, like 5 years old. 65, I think, is our oldest one. So just great minds and different ways of seeing the outdoors and recreation and gear. And the big challenge for me is to try and help them with their voice and get out their wording in a way that is authentic to them, but presents the listener or the reader with some kind of benefit.
Right. And style always starts at the second paragraph.
Ooh, I like that.
Like once you get over yourself, once you get over trying to affect something, which is always the first paragraph, style starts at the second paragraph, right? Where your personality is now just in an unrestricted way pouring forward. It's like style isn't something that style is just you, right? It's who you are, filtering out onto the page or through the fretboard or whatever. So I think that's something one of my writing teachers, has taught me. Style starts at the second paragraph.
That's
and
genius.
Just almost any piece of writing, if you want to find a good lead, just get rid of the first paragraph or maybe the first 2 paragraphs.
Oh, I love it. That's really helpful.
Because that's when people have their guard down. They're not trying so hard anymore.
Right.
All right. And trying's good. Like you learn through trying, but the more, tension you have and the more you try to affect a style, the worse your style always becomes because you're trying to be something you aren't. And style is about who you are. And that's a hard lesson to learn because almost everybody wants to be somebody else,
right?
But you aren't somebody else. You're you. So you have to learn to be you. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's super helpful. All right. I'm going to write that up today and send to the writers. This is super helpful stuff. Oh, I love how we can talk about all these different topics fluidly.
It's a joy. And I hope that, maybe we haven't drawn it out explicitly, but I hope there's connections here, between the different things that we've talked about. Because that's certainly true for music too, right? Usually the first couple times I'm riffing around, I'm trying to come up with something like it's affected. It's not usually the greatest stuff, but then, then my style starts to come through. So warm-ups are always really important too. Have warm-ups for everything.
That's for your fingers, for the frets, and for your body, for exercise, and for your mind, for writing.
For all of it. Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of the great lessons of so I would recommend, there's a really nice book on writing if people want to grab more books. It's called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. It's kind of a hidden gem. It's popular among writers, but I find that that's just a really great book, introducing you to the elements of style, what style really is, how to develop your own style. I say unleash, really, because again, style is who you are. What you
Right.
develop are the nuts and bolts of writing, and you need to have a good command of the nuts and bolts in writing in order to effectively express yourself. So style is blocked by incompetence. I think that's what people need to understand. Like, your style is you. That's just all it could ever be, is who you are.
Hmm.
But it can be blocked when you lack a certain degree of technical competence and you can't express that proficiently. So whether it's through the fretboard or on paper or whatever, again, it can also just be blocked because you stayed up way too late and you're just having one of those days where you can't form sentences. That is kind of me today, by the way. We're just like,
Well,
you just have those days where you just can't get something out. That happens too. But generally, I found if you're having trouble with style or tone, it's either a lack of technical proficiency or a lack of interest in the
yeah,
topic you're writing about. That's
yeah.
another big one. If you're just not interested and passionate about the thing that you're writing about, I mean, good luck. I mean, I think I've got a pretty vibrant style, but only on the things that I'm interested in. You sit here and try and get me to talk about something I have. So go back to E.B. White. Like, I'm not interested in chicken coops, but he was.
Hmm.
He loved chicken coops. He loved, he had his little farm in Maine. So it was like the happiest thing in the world for him. So it was easy for him to write about these things and have a really good style. So I think that's important too, is make sure that you have an emotional investment in the stuff that you're writing about, because then it's going to be easier for that style to pour out.
I think so. And people, I think, will be able to understand the authenticity and feel it when they read it, because
Right.
it's in their voice. Oh, that's super helpful. Well, what kind of projects are you working on right now? You're working on some new ebooks?
I am a whole bunch of different projects, some in fitness, some in philosophy. So I'm taking one ebook I'm doing is it's called How Come Anything, and it's going to be called A Philosophical Approach to God. And I'm taking a lot of the stuff I did in my master's program in philosophy and trying to just make it not sound like something you did in your master's program and just put it kind of into a simple ebook and show people how reason can lead to God, how some of the greatest philosophers throughout history have thought about sort of the ultimate foundations of things, where reason can get you, right, when you apply it consistently. What can we really know in a certain and definitive way, not just about God's existence, but God's nature. That was always my great interest of philosophy. It's part of one of the major reasons I eventually became Catholic and a religious person. So I'm interested in sharing that. I've got the first draft done. So hopefully maybe in the next month or two, I'll have that out.
Oh, cool.
I've got another one on ethics that I'm working on. So I have two in philosophy, and I have one on intermittent fasting. So I want to take this recent Fast 15 protocol that I had and kind of develop a short ebook around that as well, and introduce people to kind of what I think is a very practical and accessible method of intermittent fasting in their lives. So I've got that. And my goal this year, Sean, is because the past couple of years I've always done a traditional book, right? I've been with a traditional publisher, and it was like a huge process and just start to finish, soup to nuts. It was a multi-year process. I want to focus more on this year on little pet projects, self-published for myself, just very introductory, super affordable too. Most of these, I'll just make them like a $1 ebook on Amazon, just because, again, it's more of a creative expression for me at this point.
Yeah.
A lot of these, just like I did with my $1 kettlebell ebook, which that's not even a book, that's a pamphlet. Let's be honest here, right? Just
Yeah.
These will be much more substantial than that, but still I think accessible. And then I do want to actually build on that. I want to build out the kettlebell one a little bit more this year moving forward. So if I could get like 4 to 5 of these out this year, I think I'd be pretty happy with my creative efforts.
That's impressive. I've never used a publisher like you have, but I have put out books through, what is it, KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I broke this system. I made this book for splitboarding, and I tried to embed about 70 different hyperlinks for like YouTube videos on how to splitboard work and how to do a kettlebell swing and all this kind of stuff. I thought would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I jammed it into the KDP system, and they're like, this won't work. You don't support linking out and this and that. So they went back to their software developers, and for like 2 months they worked on it and they fixed it, but only for Kindles. I was like, I don't have a Kindle, man. So I found a different publishing place, Issue, that
Hmm.
work really well. So it keeps the book native. And if you click on the hyperlink or the video, it'll play it in a window in the book.
Oh,
So they don't go to
oh, that's
YouTube.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
I'll send
very
you a link
cool.
to that. And
Yeah,
I think for
please
your
do.
books, that'd be super awesome. Because then
That
you
might
can,
be totally better because I'm just using KDP and they've been fine. But yeah, you're right. There's some limitations there.
yeah. And
Hmm.
it was frustrating because my book wasn't, like you said, is basically an adult pop-up book. It just had some cool pictures, had
Hmm.
some mountains, had some dogs and split boards.
Sounds awesome.
It's my kind of book, right? Simple. And so I was just trying to present it to people, like, because I get asked all the time, what is a split board? Like, there's like 3 right there on the wall. And like, how do they work? Well, here's how they work. And what
Mhm.
kind of tools do you get and what kind of education? So just like
Mhm.
how to get started.
Yep.
And just like your very helpful books. And yeah, so KDP had its limitations, but Issue, it's really cool because you can also have your book printed just for the heck of it. So like, hey, I got a print version right there.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like KDP, you can just run off a printed version if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's super useful.
totally. So yeah. Anyways, it's
Cool.
a
I
good
appreciate
resource.
that. No, yeah. Please send me the link. I'd be curious. Because I just go with what's been convenient so far.
I know, right? And it
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. And especially if you don't have any links going out, KDP is totally fine. Plus, it's cool to have your book on Amazon. Your books have done really well on Amazon. Like,
Yeah,
really.
when I launched the little kettlebell one, it was #1 in the overall exercise and fitness category, which was
That's
super
incredible.
for a month. So like major category #1, not like some obscure subcategory of a subcategory of a subcategory. And it still is, top 10 and sometimes #1 in a lot of those subcategories as well. So it's been really cool because it gained a lot of early momentum and it seemed to have just carried a lot of that ever
Yeah.
since.
Well, your fans are fanatics, and that's great to have that. And they, and you
They
have
help a lot.
they help a lot, but also the way you present things helps a lot too. It's very accessible and very attractive, and yeah, it goes a long ways.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Well, other thing, you're working on a strong arm certification again, right?
Yeah, I am indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. So that's something we do typically about once a year, sometimes twice a year. And it's back at so for people who don't follow every instant of my life, I moved to Wisconsin in May
Mhm.
after being out in Pennsylvania for about 10 years. And in Pennsylvania, we have our sort of headquarters of our kettlebell camp at the Dragon Gym. My partner Sam owns the gym, and we've been rocking and rolling there for a long time. That was the hardest thing about moving. Honestly, the hardest thing about
I
moving
bet.
was creating the distance between that, because I mean that was like a second home to me. So it's hosted there, and it's always hosted there. And what's cool and unique about our certification is we coach how to coach, and we coach specifically kettlebells from a generalist and minimalist perspective. How to become ready for and capable of almost anything,
Mhm.
right? And how to get from A to B, and preferably in a straight line, or at least the straightest line possible with the fewest number of steps possible. Those are kind of the 2 pillars of our fitness philosophy. And we really focus on how to do that in a group format, specifically for trainers and business owners who want to have really high energy, dynamic, and effective group classes. So it's complementary to a lot of stuff that is already out there with kettlebells. And we kind of hope that people come in with some kettlebell-y certification, or at least workshop experience of some sort. Like come
Mhm.
in knowing the kettlebell swing, come in knowing the press, like at least the basics. We'll help you refine them, but the goal of our cert is to help you coach them, not necessarily to learn them. And then the other cool thing is we are very business focused. We have a mastermind component of the cert. And part of the reason we host it and only host it at our business is because we sort of lift the curtain and we show people exactly how our systems run. They'll see the classes being held in person as
Mhm.
they're learning, and they'll be teaching and interacting with a lot of the students, which is awesome. And then we sit down, we do a little business powwow at the end of every day, and just help people with wherever they're at in their business, designing systems, getting started, lead capture if they need that, conversion strategies, you name it. So there's a pretty, I think, nice blend between the practical, the coaching, but then also how do you communicate your value? How do you get the word out about what you do? And we found that's been lacking severely in most fitness certifications.
I
And
would definitely agree with that.
I think that we're uniquely qualified to be able to offer that. And many people who've come have said that that's been one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable parts, is just the business mastermind. So that's strong on cert in a nutshell.
That's really awesome. And, I've taken a lot of certifications and learned a lot of great techniques from great instructors. But the one thing that they don't touch on, if at all, is the business aspect, which I think is, if you're a fitness professional, especially a self-employed business owner, like there's always a lot to learn, and your content on how to passive income and how to have systems and stuff like that is very helpful.
Well, thank you very much again. And I'll emphasize there's kind of two things that I've noticed, and after collecting like an alphabet soup after my name in certifications. One is that programming is often lacking in certifications, and the reason for that is because certifications are often so general that it's hard to talk programming. And this is funny because I consider myself a generalist, right? But being a generalist is to have a specific goal in mind, right? To be a generalist, right? And to not be a specialist, to not be a professional power lifter or a bodybuilder or something like that. And since we have that framework of, okay, how do we help people develop a robust general physical preparedness? Well, now we can really talk about programming in that specific context, because programming is always something that's aimed at something. And unless you know what you're aiming at, you really can't talk intelligently about programming. And that's not necessarily a criticism. It just seemed like something that we could offer some specific guidance on in relation to kettlebells for most business owners who are going to be serving most people who don't want to be hardcore specialists anyway. So we could really get in detail about the programming, how to design not just workouts, but also group classes, structures, challenges, all of that. So you leave knowing how to implement these things. And then, the other element would be, all right, now how do we get people in the classes, right? How do we get
very
clients?
important.
How do we get students? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's so cool. So they'll be back in Pennsylvania, and can people sign up for that right now?
They can. chroniclesofstrength.com. We already have a great group. It's going to be high energy. A lot of people from the Strong On Facebook group will be putting faces to names, which would be great. But it's chroniclesofstrength.com/Strong On certification. And we have a more detailed PDF too, if you want just like, some of the finer points of everything that's covered, but that'll give you the gist of it. And then if you just have any questions or want that PDF, you can email me, patflynn@chroniclesofstrength.com, and I'll be happy to pass that along. But it's the weekend of May 16th. This is the next one. Yeah. Weekend of May 16th.
Well, I'll put that in the show notes too, and get your email in there, and the hyperlink, I got it right here. I'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you kindly, good sir. Appreciate it. It's always a good time. We always hang out. Get into just a few shenanigans, nothing crazy.
Any llamas this time?
Alpacas always make a regular visit. Yep, we have
nice.
the alpaca team from Lancaster County out in Amish country. So funny, actually. It's a goofy like inside joke. Whatever, we love alpacas as part of Strong On. So I'm not even going to try to explain that. But it's been tradition to have the alpaca show up for lunchtime. So you sounds so stupid, but it's awesome. So you can eat lunch with the alpacas. I mean, what else could you possibly want, right? I mean, sign up right now. I mean, that's it. And it's so funny because like we're waiting for the alpacas to show up, and we see this like kind of like red minivans pull up. I'm like, oh, it must be like a family here for like a taekwondo orientation or something. And then out of this little red minivan come 3 gigantic alpacas. Like just imagine that, like this little red minivan. She somehow stuffed 3 alpacas. This can't be illegal, right? Yeah. And you see these things walk out of this minivan. It's the most bizarre, but also the most hilarious thing. And yeah, we all had lunch and put our arms around the alpacas, had some selfies and pictures taken. It was a great time.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And random, very random.
Indeed. But it's tradition, so it can't be broken. We've already got it scheduled, so it'll definitely happen.
That's awesome. I wish I can come just to hang out with the alpacas.
Hey man, be my guest.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Oh well, Pat, we and I can talk for a couple more hours easily, but if you want to give me an hour and a half of your time, and I really appreciate it.
Is that really what it's been? Oh man, this has gone by. I've really enjoyed this.
I know, it's like 5 minutes. Oh goodness gracious.
Well, hey, round 3 then, right?
Let's do round 3, and it will be let's do it sooner than I did last time. I think it was like a 3-month gap. 2.5-month gap between the last.
Has it been that long too? Man, I have a very poor perception of time.
Me too. I was looking back at it's like December 12th, and it's almost March. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. But yes, absolutely, would love to.
Let's do that. I mean, we've touched on some really cool subjects I'd like to drill down on more.
Yeah.
I think you would too. So, well, Pat, Love you, man. Thank you for everything you do. All the best to you and your family.
Love you too, man. Yeah, absolutely. This has been an absolute treat. So thank you. I hope that anybody who made it to the end here has gotten something out of this. I really do.
Not just alpacas. Oh, awesome. Well, Pat, thank you very much for your time. And to your listeners out there, thank you for your time. And I love you for listening.